Palo Alto Networks Firewall, the VPN configuration. So now we're going to put this secure stuff together, kind of get a tunnel going, see what actually happens and how to make it work. Alright, so basically our concept here is really very simple. We're going to set up a tunnel. So I have a second firewall over here. Alright, so it's going to be controlling these guys. We'll just go very simple. We'll go from users to users. Alright, so over on here, we had that 192.168.201.0, and over on this side I have 192.168.202.0. Alright, so we'll keep things kind of fairly simple. I really don't want to complicate it with, having to be the same addresses and doing, destination NAT or anything like that. Well, again, not try to make it too complicated because that's a bad design scenario anyway. So 2 separate networks on here, real easy. You have connectivity in between here, layer 3 connectivity between the 2 firewalls. As long as they can reach each other, we're good to go. So what all do we need to set up? Remember from our concepts we talked about, we have to have a tunnel. The interface. We have to have our IKE gateway. And we have to have, I guess the IPsec tunnel itself, so put that as number 3. And then number 4 would be my routes. And that pretty much should get us to where we need to be. We'll just do it static route, nothing too incredibly difficult on there. But that should get us where we have to be with things. Now, right here in the middle, so the 2 firewalls that I have are actually both in the same subnet. So, we are kind of oversimplifying it. So 208.81.23, and we'll just say .x. Over here, on my user side, my starting side, is 150. That's what we've been doing over here. And then the other side is going to be a 224. So really kind of just numbers. It doesn't honestly make any difference what it is at all, but those are the numbers that we're using. So we're going to know that we're tying those together for my IKE gateway. They have to establish that initial conversation in there, but once we get that conversation going, once we have everything else matching for it, then it's all a matter of putting the pieces in place. So let's go ahead and dive into the configuration. You can run with this, I can run with this, however you choose you want to do it, but we'll kind of sit there and step through what we need to do to make this successfully work, and then of course test it out. That's the fun part. So just to kind of establish that we have some connectivity here, let's just go ahead and kill this part. We can see that we have things Google. Okay, we see that we have web connectivity on here. I can actually ping a few different things on here. Most importantly, though, I cannot ping 192.168.201.1, okay, or 1 through 10, the host that I have there, because I don't have anything set up. Even though I got internet connectivity, good to go on that part, but not so much on the connections that we happen to want on there. Okay? So that's kind of a very interesting thing. Actually, let's go ahead and just keep this going as a continuous ping. That way the VPN will start to set itself up. Okay? Remember, everything with the VPN is going to work on what we call interesting traffic, which means that we've defined what those rules are, and until such traffic comes in, some vendors will have checkbox about, always make this VPN tunnel available, but otherwise, every vendor works the same way as a default method, which is that when traffic comes in, that's when we establish the tunnel. So I'll go ahead and keep that continuous ping going. Let's hop over here to host 1, and we'll kind of do the same thing over on this side. Let's see, ping 192.168.202.1. And again, we'll just kind of keep the pings going over there so that once the tunnel does come up, or once the tunnel is configured anyway, it will actually come up right away. So let's go ahead and hop onto our routers, or not our routers, our firewalls anyway, and get this thing moving. All right, so hopping in here, I've got both my VM with the 201 side and with the 202 side. So I've got 2 different VMs or virtual machines firewalls up and running. So we've got that part going on. Now, what were those steps that we went through again? Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be looking at is creating a tunnel interface. So I'll just go over to my network right here, and I can go over to interfaces, which is going to be my default where I'll set up, and I'll go ahead and do an add interface. Actually, that works a whole lot better when I click on tunnel. So, tunnel. Now we can add an interface. So by the way, I could not add a physical interface because, well, of course, they're physical that way. And I also have some limits on my VMs for how many interfaces I'm allowed to have. So when we get into here, simple stuff, tunnel, and I'll give it a dot, a designation on here, a number from 1 to 999. Honestly, dot 1 is going to be perfectly fine for us. This will be our test IPsec tunnel. Okay, so nothing too incredibly difficult on here. I will figure out where to apply it. Okay, so virtual routers can be default. My VMs and my lower end Palo Altos only have a single virtual router anyway, and decide where to put this information in here. Okay? So on this side, we're going to put it into clients. Now, there's lots of different things that we can discuss or think about in terms of where we want to put it security zone-wise. And it may actually make a difference depending on where my VPNs are going, what the VPNs happen to be. I may have a tunnel interface that goes directly into my users. I may have a tunnel interface that goes directly into my server's network. I may have a tunnel interface that goes directly to a DMZ and, or even create a completely new zone just for my VPNs if they're extranet partners or something. The difference, my logic for thinking about this is what's going to happen once the packets come out. Okay, so you think about this, you got a tunnel, so you've got this, tube coming into your network essentially, and all of the packets, all of the information is going to be dumped out someplace. After it's dumped out in that someplace, what then happens next? Well, your firewall has to move the packets, has to check the packets, has to route the packets, has to treat them like any other received packet. So we look at it for making our life easy. In this case, I'm doing a user-to-user, so think about it like a site-to-site tunnel between your own employees. So you trust them, well, at least at the certain level that you do trust them anyway, but you trust the information as being internal. So I can dump it directly into my client side, which means that I won't have to make any security policy changes for client-to-client communication. If I want them to go out to the servers that I have or to some other security zone or things like that, yes, I will need to put security policies in there. But by virtue of where I'm dumping them out, what particular zone in here I'm dumping them out on, will determine what my other steps, if so, from a security policy point of view, are or are not necessary. So we'll keep this one simple, just keep it on clients. I kind of go in there, and, honestly, from a point-to-point tunnel standpoint, we could get away without doing an IP address on here, so I'm going to kind of go with that, and we'll just keep things simple that way. We're not doing any dynamic routing, so I really don't need to worry about my own IP address for that particular perspective. Management profile, since there isn't an IP address, there's really no point in putting that on there. We're not going to be pinging or tunneling, going directly to the tunnel interface itself. So from this standpoint, I can go ahead and click OK. I have created my tunnel at this point in time. Have stuff, we're going, we're moving along as it is. My next step that I need to get to, so still here within my network menu side, is going to be an IKE gateway. So right down here under my network profiles. So my IKE gateway is going to get me to the other side. Now, this is my first firewall, so .150 is my local address on here, which means .224 is the other side. Okay, so I'm going to add very simple things. Okay, so IKE gateway, we'll just call it my test IPsec. IKE gateway. Interface is what physical interface it's going to be bound to. Okay? Now, this might be worth checking out. I'm pretty sure that Ethernet 1.4 is my outside or my internet-facing interface. Okay? And you may have more than one, again, depending on the size of your layout or anything. So pick which physical interface this will be bound to. That's going to determine what IP address is used as the source address in effect that way. Okay, so local IP address on here. It'll tell you at this point you can pick one if you have more than one assigned to it. Internet interface, of course, is the only one available for 1.4, which does verify that, yes, that was my internet link on there. So pure IP type, static, we're going to be good to go with that, and just type the address for it. All right, so nothing too incredibly difficult on there. We will do pre-shared key, okay, and honestly, I would just do CBT, oops, I'll do all lowercase to kind of keep things simple, but CBT nuggets, and do it again just to confirm, everything going to be good at that point. For local identification, peer identification, we have choices that we can put on here. The easiest to do, and this will help determine things about us being main mode, aggressive mode, or I guess even auto at that point, but the things that we can choose on here where we're at. But everything that we're going to have IP address wise, that's going to tell us. 208.81.23.150 for local, and 208.81.23.224 for my other side. So exchange mode, again, this will tell us where we're going to be at. I can specify what I want, or I can let it do it automatically. I would just keep it as automatic just to kind of keep life easy that way. For my crypto profiles, if I don't create one separately, which I can, I just go ahead and use the default. There's no specific requirement that we have. I'll go ahead and step through this anyway, just so we can see the parts on there. But again, like we talked about in the concepts, we have to specify a Diffie-Hellman group, an encryption type, and an authentication type. And the lifetime, default 8 hours, we can do whatever we want. But key thing is these three that are in yellow must absolutely match on both sides. So, again, not going to worry about doing anything too incredibly fancy. The default is perfectly fine on there. So that gives me the ability of setting things up. Everything else that we have, I can do my dead peer detection, let that go. That's kind of a default setting, and leave it like it is. That'll be my IKE gateway. Oh, I did forget, by the way, we cannot put spaces in my name. There we go. Okay, so anyway, once these things go away, by the way, notice that my OK button clears up right here. Okay, so there's a little small things sometimes, but important ones. So go ahead and click OK on that. I have my IKE gateway set up. I can go ahead and do this on both sides if you want to do them in parallel. That's certainly not a bad way of doing things. So network, and click on interfaces. I can verify in here, yeah, Ethernet 1.4 is my internet, so good to go on the same side for that. Create my tunnel one like we did. Default virtual router and users on this side. Very simple stuff. And go ahead and click OK. And then my IKE gateways. We'll add from this side. We'll hyphenate everything. 1.4, same way, Ethernet interface. Okay, pure IP address is the other side. So it should be that. Pre-shared key, CBT nuggets. Fine. IP address. Okay, so got everything going on there. IKE phase 1 side, I believe that we left this for the default, so not going to do anything special. Go ahead and click OK. So we've got IKE gateways now on both sides. Okay, so we are good to go for that. Pop back and forth here. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is create my IPsec tunnels. Okay, so that's going to be under the IPsec crypto setting right here. Sorry, IPsec crypto is going to be if I need to do any transform sets. Okay, IKE crypto, by the way, I can see my default AES 128 triple DES, SHA-1 group 2, which is 2048, or I'm sorry, 1536 bits. IPsec crypto, on the other hand, see exactly the same thing for my default settings. That's what I'm going to use. We're good to go. Here's where you can create your transforms that we'll select between. Up here is my IPsec tunnels. So this is where I'll need to add them. And again, name, let's see, we're on the first firewall, so connect to FW2. Tunnel interface, I can just do a drop down in here. I only have one of them, so it's not going to be a whole lot. Remember, this is going to make a difference as I'm creating multiple VPNs to determine where the packets are dropped off. So determining my security policies or things like that as we go in there. Okay, so tell me my IKE gateway. I've only got one of them configured as well, but in case you had multiples, go ahead and go with that. Default profile, that's perfectly cool. Okay, so nothing too difficult. I can click on Show Advanced Options. That's if I want to get into some monitoring or some QoS information, or the replay protection is on by default. Honestly, unless you have a need to change them, don't worry about them. It's just that they're there. My key thing, however, is going to come in my proxy IDs. Now, what is it that a proxy ID was again? Okay, proxy ID, you're right, is one of those things that we exchange during the IKE phase. Okay, so technically exchange during phase 2, but often shows up as a phase 1 error for things. But this is telling me what network is going from this side to that side. So what traffic will actually be encrypted in there. So that's going to be one of those things in here. So we'll just call this users, very simple stuff. Now on this side, I have 192.168.201.0/24, and the other side 192.168.202.0/24. And when we start doing this, okay, and I can choose, protocols or stuff like that if I want to get really specific. Most of the time, leave it as any. But in here, the other side will be the inverse of this. So that's kind of logically what we're aiming for, is that you have the exact same thing, well, backwards anyway, but you have the exact same network to be encrypted so we can differentiate. Remember what we said? The last nugget was that if I receive something that is encrypted that I think shouldn't be, I will simply discard it. Likewise, if I receive something unencrypted that I think should be encrypted, I will also discard it. Okay? So we got to be very careful in what we're setting up on here, and we can have more than one, but just set up our simple proxy IDs. We've only got one network that we're caring about on here. So that's going to be that side, and there's my tunnel. So let's go over here and do the same thing. So IPsec tunnel, I'll go ahead and add one. Tunnel interface is going to be .1. Auto keys fine. IKE gateway, only have one of those. Default profile and my proxy ID. So add this, test 1 to 168.202.0/24 over to the 201. And click on OK. Okay, so this is a good site. So we have our information on here. Now the next part that we need to do. Okay, so notice my my status is red because nothing's really occurring at this point, which is very true. Because even though I have those continuous pings going, remember my firewall is receiving stuff and it looks at policies and sees if everything's okay, but more importantly, it routes them. And right now, I don't have a route that's pointing to my tunnel interface. So for all intents and purposes, even though I do have interesting traffic occurring, it's really not very interesting because it's not going to the VPN structure in order to think through that. Okay? So my next step on here, and go to the first router first, I guess, is to go up to my virtual routers and click on default, because of course it's my only one. Tunnel 1's under there, so that's all cool. And let's go to static routes. Now I do have my 00, and that's perfectly fine, but I'm going to add one. Okay, say test VPN 1, destination 192.168.202.0/24, and it's going to be to tunnel 1. All right, there's really nothing else that I really need to do about it. And we'll just say none for my next hop right here. There's nothing I need to worry about with that, and go ahead and install it. So I say yes for that. All right, and go to the other side and do the same thing. So virtual routers default, static routes, add. Okay, tunnel 1, none for next hop, and install. So we are good. Have my route set up. All right, so let's go ahead and check back at my IPsec tunnel. Now, even though I have my continuous ping, they're still in red. Now, what's up with that? Okay, we're missing one very important piece here. Yeah, that's right. We have to commit the information. Remember, nothing's really active at this point in time, which is great from a config standpoint, but not so much if we want it to work. Okay? So let me go ahead and go over here. We'll hit commit on this side and say OK. Click over here, do a commit over here. Yes, OK. Okay, first one committed successfully, that's good. Second one also successfully, that's good as well. So we are good to go with that part. And oh look, magically things went to green. How cool is that? So let's hop over to our hosts over there and see how well we did with that. Well, I don't even have to click on there too much because I can see on the screen I'm now getting pings back and forth from the other side of the network. So we have done encrypted traffic on here, and it's actually gone pretty well. I like it. Love it when a plan comes together. All right, so let's hop in just to a quick SSH session onto one of my VMs anyway. And we can just do a couple show commands on here to see some of the CLI portion of what we're looking at. So show VPN tunnel, tell me exactly what's going to be going on, what my name of it happens to be, what it is, the IKE gateway that it's through, my local proxy information, my remote proxy information. Also tells me my stuff about the transform set that I'm using, so the security settings that I have and what my lifetime happens to be. So we are all good on that. I can also do a show VPN flow, and then I'll get to my tunnel ID, and really, question mark, okay, well, it just tells me 1. But notice up here, the tunnel ID is what's listed, so it is number 1, it's what it should be since I only have 1. But give that information for it, pop it out, and it'll give you more detailed stuff as to exactly what's going on and how you're connected and where you're connected. So we can see a lot of things on here, where we're at, any errors, stuff like that. Notice, more importantly, encapsulated packets, encapsulated bytes, stuff along those lines that we see, and we're moving things through just fine. Woohoo! We did well. We got a VPN up and going. All right. Remember, those important parts to it. So we had our tunnel interface, our IKE gateway, our IPsec tunnel, and of course our routing. So the 4 main important parts in there. On these 2, if I needed, I could create transform sets as well. I guess transform set is other vendor's name, but basically the encryption information, if the default was not correct, I can create my new ones, make sure that they all match. This is especially important when going between one vendor and another, but beyond that, these are the simple things as far as doing stuff, and we also looked at a couple commands as far as verifying the tunnel. And believe it or not, life was good. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.